Hello, I'm happy to be here recording a deep dive session on the Maker's Bar. My name's Aaron Trahan, and I'm a founder of Performance Mindset Coaching based here in Austin, Texas, in the United States. A bit about my background and what I want to share with you today is really what goes into the journey of personal transformation and how we can become the best version of ourselves. Before launching my performance coaching firm, I spent the past 15 years as a senior level executive leader. What's interesting about that background is my experience occurred on both ends of the spectrum. Early on in my career, I worked inside publicly traded corporate environments where the back end of my career, I spent in early stage startups. So this has given me a really unique perspective to see how cultures, how teams, and really how behaviors and priorities are built and set that lead people and organizations to achieving the desired results. What I found is it all comes back down to people. You can have the best strategy, you can even have the best product, but to really generate sustained success, it really comes down to having the right people in the right place in an environment that supports and challenges them to do their best work. So the problem that I am solving today in my coaching firm that I've encountered throughout my career is what studies continue to show and report on. And that's so many people in the public corporate environments not operating as the best versions of themselves, not really tapping into their full potential. And what's interesting about these studies that all these third parties have reached out, have asked professional leaders and executives across a number of different industries, the question of how much of a percent of your full potential do you believe that you're expressing in your day-to-day work? The response that came back, while a bit shocking, but not all that surprising, was the average result was people feel that they're only giving about 30 to 40% of their true potential and their true capability in their day-to-day operation. So that's really led me to chart a course and do important work of working with teams, working with individuals, and trying to change that. Because there is going to be a future regret that comes from getting stuck in the status quo, being trapped in a perceived comfort zone to where you know deep down you're not playing at your full potential. While that may feel good in the short term, you're not being stretched, you're not being challenged, it won't show up until later on in your career where you look back and say, what if I would have really given everything that I had? What if I would have played the best game that I possibly could have played? What if I showed up every single day focused on operating as the best version of me and bringing my full potential to work every single day? So that led me to really mapping out, what does the average room look like? How can I really look at mindsets around a given team or a group or a room and really identify what that looks like from a mindset perspective? So I've generated a 70-20-10 mindset rule. This is basically a general rule that applies to every team, just about every group, every room. You're going to see the 70-20-10 mindset rule generally apply. This rule states that 20% of every team or every room is going to be made up by fixed mindset individuals. For whatever reason, they're just not engaged to show up and learn. They're not interested in developing further. Could be because they're at the tail end of their career, but for whatever reason, they are set in their ways. What they're prioritizing is the status quo. They don't want to change, and they would much prefer to give out advice and give out guidance than ask questions to really develop their learning and develop their capability. So thankfully, this only makes up about 20% or so of each team, but then that takes us to the 70%. And here's where things start to get really interesting. In every single room that I present in, every single group, I make sure, A, everyone's aware of what the general definition is to a growth mindset, which is with the proper amount of time, energy, and effort, you can enhance your skills. You can develop your intelligence. You can add to and increase your capabilities. It's thought that when you have a growth mindset, because you believe all those things, you're able to overcome obstacles. You're able to deal with adversity because you have a growth mindset. Without fail, 70 to 80% of every room that I ask who identifies with a growth mindset, 70 to 80% raise their hand. They think all the right things, they believe all the right things, but not all that different than the fixed mindset group. They too are stuck in the status quo. They too have blended into their external environment, and they're operating much more based off external expectations than they are from their own internal expectations. Or said differently, they may think and believe all the right things. And you know what? They're even going to say all the right things. If you go to their LinkedIn pages, they're most likely even posting all the right things. But when you really zoom in on their actions, their behaviors, their actions, they're not really investing and putting action behind that growth mindset belief. Thinking and believing can only take you so far before you have to take action to really make progress towards the results that you ultimately want to see. So though they identify with a growth mindset, they're stuck in a comfort zone. They may have had some success, but they feel good about where their current situation is, and they're not really wanting to rock the boat, so to speak, to stretch and challenge themselves to find out what they're truly capable of. They know deep down, the 70% group, they're not playing at their full potential. They're not operating as the best version of themselves. So that takes us with this last 10% group, and really where I wanted to help define what is a performance mindset. So what separates this last minority, the 10% group, differently from the 20%ers or the 70%ers is their bias for action. You see, they believe all the right things that the growth mindset group believes. With the proper amount of time, energy, and effort, you can develop intelligence, skills, capabilities. But unlike the 70% group, they are investing in themselves. They are taking action. They have a willingness and a desire to actually make progress on a day in, day out basis. They operate based on the foundational belief that continuous improvement, getting better every single day, is how you continue to improve over the long term. So they have a mindset that says, I'm not going to rely on what's happened in the past. I'm not going to lean on the achievements that are on my resume. I'm much more focused on looking out the front windshield to be able to find out what I'm truly capable of, what I'm able to achieve with taking continuous action to get better day after day after day. So simply stated, what separates that 70% group from this 10% group is the bias for action, is putting action behind the growth mindset belief. And that's what separates this group from everybody else. And so what I wanted to share, as we're all on our own unique journeys towards personal transformation and trying to find the best version of ourselves, is remember, thinking and believing is a great start, but without action behind it, we're going to never achieve the results that we desire to see. So, when we think about what are the areas that we should focus on to whichever group we're in to move into that performance mindset group, the group that puts action behind their beliefs, I want to go back to my background. I was a young executive in my early 20s who rose up the corporate ladder and was named a vice president of a large company before the age of 30. Now, while that's the highlight, what sat underneath that was I'm confident I've made just about every mistake there was to make in an executive leadership role. So, in my work today, when I'm working with high performers, executive leaders, I've essentially built a 5-level methodology that is exactly what I wished I would have had back when I was in the corporate setting. If I would have had this, I could have shaved a tremendous amount of time off of the time spent in trial and error and could have accelerated my path to a much more optimized version or the best version of myself to perform much better. You see, when successful professionals are increasing and scaling up their career, it often looks like an up and to the right trajectory. What happens is through a combination of success plus experience, things can change along the way. Complacency can set in. Our egos can get inflated. We feel validated by all the successes we've had in the past. And that's where that growth trajectory starts to flatten out and even starts gradually declining. We've peaked whenever we think that we have it all figured out. Our growth trajectory peaks when we stop doing a number of things that we may have unconsciously knew that we were doing as we were on the rise. So as I look back at my career and the careers of the people that I've worked with, I can really identify 5 key areas that I want to share with you today in this deep dive session that really makes up my methodology that if you're able to check these boxes as a professional, you dramatically increase the probability of continued success. So where it all starts, think of this as us building a 5-level home. Where everything starts when you're building a home is the foundation. And so this first level is around awareness. Awareness is one of the most critical components because it's going to be the foundation that we build everything up from. I'm a firm believer that you cannot enhance or improve something that you're not aware of. And on the flip side, if there's some type of resistance or obstacle that keeps getting in your way, you can't remove it or navigate and design a plan to go around it if you're not aware of it. So awareness is absolutely a critical, key, foundational component. Awareness, when we sit back and think about it, is us giving ourselves that honest assessment. We're painting that picture of what our current state looks like. What are we great at? What are our superpowers? What can we do better than anybody else that we should be leveraging as much as we possibly can? What are the development areas? What are those areas that may be holding us back? Where are the tools that we need to sharpen? Where should we be focusing to generate the biggest levels of improvement? I think other things to think about around awareness is really helping understand why is the current state the current state. If we can't paint this accurate picture and build this foundation around strengths, around our weaknesses, around what we do best, around knowing what we need to enhance, improve, and or remove, everything else that we build up from here is going to get diluted because we don't have that strong foundation. So awareness is where everything starts. Once we develop that solid current state, understanding all those things, the strengths, the weaknesses, the development areas, we can then move to clarity. Clarity is the second level of the home that we're building that's going to drive our personal transformation. And that's where we start looking outward. With clarity, we can realize the blind spots that we may have. We can start to really understand what limiting beliefs we have that may be holding a artificially low ceiling on how much we're able to grow. And almost as much as important as anything else when we talk about clarity is it starts to give us a clear picture on why our goals are our goals. If we don't know why we're doing what we're doing and what we're chasing, more is not a strategy. And so a really great exercise that I wanted to share that really helps drive clarity is what I call my two-pillar approach. When you're really thinking about increasing the clarity at which you're kind of looking out at the journey that you want to go down, there's really three very, very important questions that you should be asking. One, how are you defining success for yourself? It's a big question. It's a very thought-provoking question. It's going to force you to go several layers deeper. Notice that I emphasized how you're defining it for yourself. This is not what the external expectations are. These are not KPIs on a report. This is you looking out at your life into the future and thinking about what will success look like for you. We're all on a unique journey. And so it's very important that we understand how we are defining success for ourselves. Number two, that goes along with this is, what does happiness look like? It's very important that we understand, what does happiness look like in our lives, within our work, within our personal lives, for our career? What is it, in what environment, and what does the ideal state look like when we are defining happiness for ourselves? Once we get a clear picture around what success looks like on one pillar, what happiness looks like on the other, we can then ask the very important third question. Based on our answers and responses from the first two questions, can you be successful while being happy? This may sound very simple, but you would be surprised with how many people before doing this exercise almost have these two answers siloed and not realizing that what needs to be true for them to achieve happiness and what needs to be true for them to achieve the success are actually contradicting each other. They're not in harmony with each other. So the one sure way for you to feel empty and unfulfilled by achieving results is for there to be a big gap between these two answers. When you're giving up too much of one to achieve the other, that's when you're going to run the risk of winning not feeling like winning. So it's always important to come back to that third question of understanding, based on how I'm defining success, based on what I want happiness to look like, are those two things in harmony with each other, or do they conflict with each other? It's a very, very important exercise to go through. So we've built the foundation of awareness. We understand where we are. We've painted that accurate picture of our current state. We can now use that to look out and give ourselves clarity on the path forward, our blind spots, how we're defining success, what happiness looks like. Now we go into building the transformation bridge to take us from our current state to our ideal state. So now it's the time for the milestones and the goals. The one warning about goals is a goal should never be something that is finite or it's the end all be all. The goal is nothing more than the output of all the different inputs that go in to get us there. So when we think about a goal, it's much more important to understand the milestones that have to be achieved and need to be proven true for us to get to the goal. So many goals fail simply because people are obsessed or infatuated with the reward, with the goal, instead of being focused on the independent progress that's made along the journey, achieving each and every single milestone. And a great framework to think about is the one thing framework. So if we're setting a goal that we want to achieve within the next 12 months, think to yourself, what's the one thing that absolutely must be achieved in the next 6 months for me to be on track to achieve that 12-month goal? Work backwards from that. What's the one thing that I need to achieve in the next 3 months to ensure that I'm on track over the next 6 months for me to be on track to achieve my 12-month target? You can work backwards from this all the way down to the next month, to the next 2 weeks, to the next week, and then even break your weeks down by the day of just thinking about the single most important milestone, the one thing that you need to do today that keeps you on track for your weekly goal, that keeps you on track to your monthly goal, on and on. We live in a world where there's plenty of distractions, and sometimes the most important thing is just keeping the most important thing the most important thing. So use this framework to understand the goal is important. There's no question about that. It's the gravitational pull. But what's most important is doing the actions today that lead to us achieving the milestones that keep us on track to achieve the goal. The fourth level that I want to talk about is thought partnership. This is so critical. This is a great opportunity for you to examine what feedback loops do you have in your life? What thought partnerships do you have? All of the most successful leaders that I work with have very robust thought partnership networks. What does a thought partnership network do for you? It allows a group of peers to help stretch your thinking. It allows third parties to really come in and help broaden your perspective and really help you see problems and solutions from an entirely different lens. So go back and really think about all the different feedback loops that you have in your life. Are they providing valuable insights that ultimately help shine light on where you may be developing blind spots? I've never seen a successful leader that didn't have a strong thought partnership network. And then lastly, this is the last floor of the house, and that's accountability. We cannot underestimate accountability. If you show me someone who chronically underachieves and give me another person with the same background, same education, same opportunity, who massively overachieves and continues to find success after success after success, what's going to sit in the middle is strong accountability. When you've got the awareness, you've got the clarity, you've set the milestones and the goals, you've got thought partnerships around you to help make sure that you are able to see around corners and don't develop too narrow of a thought mindset, then it comes down to just executing what you set out to plan, what you set out to achieve. And if the only person that's keeping us accountable is that voice inside of our head, we're going to be in trouble. So make sure you've got a very solid accountability system, ideally from a third party. Your goals and milestones are shared. You're able to bounce these things off of your thought partnership network, and you always maintain strong awareness and clarity. If you achieve and consistently come back to and make sure that these 5 areas are not weaknesses, but are strengths for you, the probability of success is overwhelmingly high. As a matter of fact, I've yet to come across a professional who consistently executes in these 5 areas and has not found success. I hope this has been helpful for you. I'm a firm believer that mindset is everything. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're always going to be right. Use these 5 levels to always make sure that you're in that 10% mindset group that's putting in the right actions behind the right thoughts that's getting you to your ideal state. Thank you. And I very much enjoyed sharing this on the deep dive session here on the Makers Bar. Take care.